Welcome in to this week's edition of the Boys Night Fantasy Football League Network, or the BNFFLN, as we like to say here on set. Across from me, as always, is Bob.
Hi.
And I, of course, am Weave, and this is our first ever pre-draft analysis. Today, we will be basically touching on four main categories, which are the bounce-back candidates, potential busts, those savvy vets, and the prized rookies. Now, this won't be the most in-depth analysis, but we will do our best to touch on a few players for each section, and it's enough to kind of get you more familiar with these players and just get your feet wet since we're about a month out from the draft. And yeah, we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, and this is also another first is we're all audio this time.
All audio.
I've been told that I have the face for radio.
That's perfect.
All right. Yeah. Good. Then I'm gonna fit right in here.
All right. Then there's nothing left to do but get right to it.
That's right.
And don't worry, guys. This will be a quick one.
I don't know about that.
Well,
I don't know if you haven't seen my bullet points, or you have. So I mean,
all right. Up first, we have the bounce back players. Now, these are players who were maybe very good. They're tier 1, tier 2, maybe even tier 3. They're guys that you would be starting in your lineup almost without a doubt, but maybe last year, for whatever reason, they had a dip in production. You drafted them high. They didn't hold that value. You ended up regretting it by the end of the season, and we're hoping some of these players can make their way back to stud status, or at least starter status. So, up first, Bob, who do you got?
all right, cool. We'll start here. I'm going to start with a player that I personally had last year and was a big disappointment for the round that I took him in, and that is T.Y. Hilton for the Indianapolis Colts. I had drafted him expecting Luck would be back, or if not back, at least back early in the season. We all know how that turned out, and Luck didn't come back. So I'm hoping this year that if Andrew Luck is back, I see Ty just going right back into that top elite wide receiver status. I do think even with Luck back in the beginning, though, he will kind of be he'll have a slow start with Andrew Luck.
Yeah, they kind of got to build that rapport again, get things on the same page.
I mean, he hasn't played a snap of football in almost 2 years. So, I mean, that's a long time. You just don't jump back into it and be, a stud. It's going to take some time, but I think over the course of the whole season, I think if Andrew Luck plays a healthy season, you'll be happy with what you get, with the production you get from Ty.
Yeah, I mean, T.Y. Hilton, he's always been a speed guy. He's always very fast. He can stretch the field, and now if he has a quarterback who can adequately throw to those spots on the field, I mean, he's still only 28 years old. He's still young. Like we said, he had that down year last year. He only had 57 receptions and 4 touchdowns, and those are where he makes his money. He was always a high volume guy, and somehow he was always either breaking off big plays, but because of the ground game last year and the quarterback situation, and Jacoby Brissett did a very good job. I mean, for coming in, learning the system right away. I mean, he did well enough, but not enough to keep Ty at the value where he was drafted.
Yeah, and I think another thing with the Colts in general was their offensive line was not the best in pass protection. I know they spent a first-round pick this past draft and at the guard position, so that offensive line will be improved. So, and I think that's the smart thing to do from the standpoint of the Indianapolis Colts. You want, if you having Andrew Luck come back on just getting done with a hurt shoulder, like you want to spend the money and spend the capital on.
He's your franchise quarterback.
You need to protect him, yeah.
5 or 6 years, if not more now, to get it done, and they haven't. So hopefully this will be the year that they make a turn. They finally start protecting him adequately, which opens up the field, and then you can let your playmakers make plays. That's what they're there to do.
Absolutely.
And T.Y. Hilton,
yeah,
he's that guy.
Yep, I think so. Yeah, if Andrew Luck's back, I'm a big Ty fan.
All right. Next, now I also picked someone that I drafted fairly high, and outside of like 2 or 3 explosive games, he really let me down, and that would be Amari Cooper. Now, we know he's always kind of struggled with drops throughout his career, but he's another guy who found himself in a tough situation because a lot of people would say that 2 years ago, the Raiders overachieved because the amount of games that they won within 7 points was crazy and that maybe they shouldn't have made the playoffs quite yet. But Derek Carr, he got hurt multiple times last year. He gritted through it though, so give him props there. But they didn't quite have the same rapport there. Um, Now you have a new head coach coming in, John Gruden, along with a whole new regime of coaches, playbooks, style of play that they want to establish. And Gruden has said up front he wants Amari Cooper to be the guy. And I think that's really important. Maybe they don't force feed him, but he does become the focal point because he's another guy. He's been playing in the league for 3 years now, and he had 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards his first year, over 1,000 his second year, and he's only 24. He's not the biggest guy, but he's definitely quick, and he knows he's got a fairly good route tree. So we're hoping that he can bounce back. He can go back to being a tier 1 guy and prove his worth.
Yeah, no, and Amari Cooper, he's been one of those guys that I feel like people have just put so much pressure on him to perform well, because I don't think he's been a bad receiver.
No, not at all.
It's just that where you were drafting him
And where the expectations were set, he just didn't get
and people
there.
would, and people would fall for it every year. They'd keep drafting high, keep drafting. I think if definitely if his value drops, which with Michael Crabtree gone, I don't think it will. I think he will stay there, but if he were to drop a little bit, I think his value would be great. I think that'd be a
Yeah, I
value
mean,
draft for
he's
sure.
certainly someone that you could still, let's say he's in the draft in maybe the 4th or 5th round, and you can get him there. Tremendous value right there.
Yeah. So then you can't be upset with him. Like if he ends up in that back of the end wide receiver 1, top tier wide receiver 2. If you drafted him later though, that's the production you want from a player like that. But I think he has the potential to
He
be
certainly does.
an elite receiver. Yeah.
And I think, and people are split on this, but obviously Michael Crabtree is gone, and he was a big target. Derek Carr really loved to hone in on him, especially towards the end zone. So they thought, oh, Michael Crabtree, he's being shipped out. He's gone. This could open up more possibilities. But they did bring in Jordy Nelson, who has been a tremendous receiver throughout his whole career. He's getting a little older now, but he always manages to get open in the red zone. And so he kind of fits that mold of Michael Crabtree, although a little older. But if he becomes that guy and he's always someone that they're going to put someone on, it could open things up down the field for Amari Cooper. So that could be good down the line.
Yep.
All right. Next up, Bob, who do you got?
Yeah. So similar situation as far as Carr being hurt all year, and I think this is one of the reasons. He kind of had two things going against him last year, and that is Corey Davis with Marcus Mariota being out with, what was it, hamstring or
That sounds right.
yeah, I can't remember the exact injury, but it definitely hampered. And even when he came back, he wasn't that mobile quarterback that we're used to seeing out of Mariota. So I think with his game is not to just drop back in the pocket. He wants to be able to hurt you with his legs, and not being able to do that, it allowed defenses to kind of drop back in coverage and not really worry about him scrambling. And I think that kind of hurt Corey Davis. He just, he didn't get open as much. They didn't have to worry about. They can kind of clamp down on him. And he had injuries of his own, Corey Davis. So
yeah, I think he was also
hamstring as well. Yeah. And but you can just, when you watch the tape and you see him, go up and high point a football, and he's just this large, athletic wide receiver, you can see the potential there. And I think with all the pieces in place, bringing in Dion Lewis, I'm pretty sure did they bring in Dion Lewis? I'm almost
from the Patriots.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Another element to the run game. That's another thing defenses have to worry about. I think. I know a lot of people think that.
Who are you thinking of?
I'm thinking of some Eric Decker.
That's
Decker.
one.
Yeah,
Wide receiver.
Yeah, because he's a very he's been the main target there. But I just think that's only because Corey Davis has been hurt and he hasn't really had the opportunity to develop with Mariota.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, you still have Delaney Walker there, if that's who you may have been reeling for too.
Yeah.
Because he's always a target monster, but he's also starting to get, and he's criminally underrated, by the way. He should be always listed as one of the top tight ends, and not everyone lists him there. But he's getting older now, and injuries did slow him down a little bit last year. But if you still have that threat in
Delaney Walker
at the tight end position, and if Eric Decker is still there, I can't remember if he's gone somewhere else though.
Eric Decker?
Yeah, if he signed somewhere else.
He might have.
But if not, if he's still there, then you have two options there. They're spreading the field, and you can kind of let Corey Davis grow into a really good player. I mean, again, most wide receivers struggle their first year or two anyways,
Mm.
unless they're a big, freak athlete that just happens to hit the right system, the coaching, the quarterback situation. So yeah, I'm excited for Corey Davis. We had him in one of our leagues last year,
Hmm.
and we'll see if he can live up to that potential.
Yeah, I feel like when I look for a potential breakout, it's good to look at wide receivers that were coming out of college that were hyped and then they let you down, because that second year is when they really start to flourish, because it's like you had said, like it's hard for a rookie wide receiver to do well in the NFL.
Yeah, and
Everything
make
kind of
make
has
an
to fall.
impact.
Exactly. So when you're looking for a potential breakout candidate, a good place to look is sophomore wide receivers.
That's right. Good value there.
Absolutely.
All right. And up next for bounce back, the final one is, and this isn't quite bounce back, it's a little cheating, but Mike Evans. He burned a lot of people in only that they were expecting him to be a full blown wide receiver one. And he certainly had games and he was consistent, but his yardage was the lowest it had been since his rookie year, actually slightly lower. His average yards per catch was up, so that's good. But his touchdowns, obviously he had 12 the year before. That was a big spike, and he dropped back down to 5, so that hurts. But way less receptions. He was down in 70s instead of floating right around the 100 mark. And so we think and obviously we just found out this week with the Jameis Winston suspension for the first 3 games.
Yeah, has he appealed yet, or at the time
I
of this
I don't
recording?
think he's going to appeal, only
Which I think is a
because
smart decision.
the way his contract is set up,
Yeah.
he'll only lose a couple $100,000 instead of millions. So I imagine he will serve it. But you do have waiting in the wing there,
Oh
Mr.
yeah.
Ryan
Fitzmagic.
Fitzmagic.
Oh.
So who knows? But Mike Evans, he still was a stud wide receiver. He put up great numbers. It just wasn't what we were used to seeing, and it didn't exceed, which everyone always wants more and more. And eventually, he can't do that every single season.
Mhm.
So he's still young. He's 24, 6'5", real tall guy. He's always going up, getting the high point of the ball, always a threat to get a touchdown, toe tap, whatever it needs to be. But Mike Evans, we like him to bounce back this year.
Yeah, and he's always a guy that, you know, a lot of the times he could command double digit targets in a game.
Oh
And
yeah,
they always, you always hear opportunity is king. Like and when you are looking for a player to draft, like even if they're even like bad players that get the opportunity and get a lot of opportunity, they can still be fantasy producing players. So I like Mike Evans, and he's a stud. I don't think anyone should worry about Mike Evans with the Jameis Winston. My question is, do you think do you think Tampa is losing their cool with Jameis, and that he could potentially be out of there? Not this year, but I feel like if something else were to happen after this, like how many chances do you get?
uh, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how basically winning solves everything. Whether it's right or wrong, it's how it happens. So if he comes back, if he does serve the 3 games, and he comes back, and they go on a tear, and things really start to clicking, because last year everyone was like, oh, he's going to take that next step, but he didn't. He got hurt. But when he came back, he started to. So who knows? If he keeps continuing to be successful and keeps growing as a player and matures more, and just whatever it is, starts clicking, then maybe he could stick around there. The culture could get better. And I know something that'll certainly help Mike Evans would also be, they finally hope that they have their answer at running back. I was reading a stat that they've been the worst in the last 3 or 4 years at explosive plays, and explosive plays are plays of like 15 to 20 yards or more, and they've had one in like the past 3 seasons. It's terrible. If you can't respect the ground game, then you can double coverage Mike Evans all day, and he's
Mhm.
still putting up these numbers. So if they have that new running back, they drafted him out of USC. I think his name is Ronald Jones.
Yep.
So I think they maybe grabbed him in the second or third round. But if they can establish something there, that could really help, because then you still have Cameron Braid at tight end.
Mhm.
You have Deshaun
OJ Howard.
Jackson stretching the field. So we like Mike Evans. Hopefully he can get things back in order, and not even that they weren't in order, but just get back to where we know he could be and play to his level.
Yep, I like it.
All right.
Get moving on.
Yeah. After the bounce back, I believe we had said we're gonna go to the potential bust,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna go ahead and lead this one off
Go
here.
for it. Yeah, go for it.
All right. So up first, I went with Latavius Murray. Now, last year he had a better year than expected. He got much more playing time because he was originally brought in to be the starter, but then they drafted Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook really impressed in the training camps and the preseason and won that starting role outright. But he did get hurt very early on. So Latavius Murray was able to step back in after he recovered from, I think, his off-season ankle surgery. But he did share that workload with McKinnon. But he's gone now. He's in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So Latavius Murray, he had a lot of touchdowns last year. He had these short yardage runs that all of a sudden, if you look at the tape, kind of exploded out. And they weren't necessarily because he was making moves. It just that's the way the kind of plays developed for whatever reason. So we feel like that was kind of a spike year for him. And if you even go back to his days when he was with the Raiders, he was getting those short yardage goal line situations, and that's always going to boost your fantasy value. And as long as they're getting that, you don't care where those points come from because they're points.
Mm-hmm.
But this year they got Cousins now, so they're going to be throwing to Thielen
That passing
and
attack is
Diggs.
good.
If that develops nicely, and then you have Dalvin Cook coming back from the injury, you're not sure how many carries he's going to get. And even last year, you saw some of the injuries starting to catch up with Murray because he would get so many carries in his days prior with the Raiders, and he's kind of a ground and pound kind of guy. So not quite sure how he'll hold up. We obviously always hope for the best, but just depending on where you draft him, he might not return the value.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember off the top of my head what round he's going in Latavius Murray. I'm guessing he's going late. But on Latavius Murray or Dalvin Cook, I mean, once he comes back, I feel like it will be his backfield. I'm pretty sure the coaches have said like once he's healthy and comes back, it'll be his backfield for him to lose. I mean, we got to see a very limited amount of Dalvin Cook in the NFL. What he did with that time was amazing, but unfortunately, it ended a little too soon. But I think with him back, it'll be interesting to see how he kind of comes back into that offense. I think it should be. I think it'll be status quo. I think he won't have a problem just working his way back into that offense, which I think for Latavius Murray he'll become more of like that giving Dalvin Cook a break on an offensive drive and not like the main part.
Yeah, definitely. So look out if the value's there and he falls in the right round, you can pick him up. Certainly grab him. You never know when you can play him on the matchups, or if
Yeah.
anything happens injury wise again
He
to
steps
the
right
other
in.
players, he can fill that role. So just be smart about where you're picking him.
Yep, I like that. I like it.
Next guy.
Yeah, next guy. Because I was thinking about the bus for a long time because it's like when you're talking about potential breakouts, people get excited, but man, when you talk about busts, like you don't want, and sometimes it's like you could get a lot of heat. And I'm gonna go Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt is one of he's my first bust. So this is another player that I had last year that I was extremely excited about getting him in the third round and then having that awesome like dynamite start, only to be followed up by 7 weeks of pure garbage. Let's see. In weeks 6 through 14, he never rushed for over 90 yards. And in 4 of those 7 weeks, he rushed for 40 or less, which is terrible. It was, and I'm honestly not sure exactly why they shied away from Kareem.
Yeah, a lot of it wasn't that he wasn't producing, it just he wasn't given the opportunity. They were limiting his carries, and now maybe it's because he was a rookie and he was getting introduced, but he showed you through that first stretch he can certainly hold up, and they had enough weapons. I mean, that offense was loaded, and
Yeah.
it still is.
It still is, yeah.
So
And the other worries I have about Kareem Hunt is him coming into the league. No, the reason he was such a star was because he wasn't supposed to have that starting position. Like that was supposed to be Spencer Ware's like position, and Spencer Ware's coming back healthy now. I think he definitely will eat, because I think Spencer Ware is a good running back, and I think he'll definitely eat into Kareem Hunt's carries. And even some of his third down work. I know Kareem Hunt can catch the ball, and he did that fairly well. I think he went let's see, what did he go for? He went 63 receptions for 455 and 3 touchdowns. Like, that's pretty good for a running back. But his pass protection is terrible. Like, he can't. Like, I was watching some film on him too, and he whiffed on some blocks. And Spencer Ware is a
Yeah,
much
and if
better.
you
Yeah,
have a rookie quarterback, or well, second year now with Patrick
technically
Mahomes,
a rookie though.
yeah, and you have him coming in and he's learning the system, you really need all your blockers to be on point. You need to trust that these guys can pick up the reads and do their job on
Andy
every
Reid's.
play. There you go. So it'll be interesting to see if Kareem Hunt, I mean, who knows? He could have really had that much extra time to learn the playbook, to practice and get that in, hone those skills to make him an all around complete back.
Yeah,
But at the same time, that's a lot to be asked.
and I mean, when you got a quarterback like Mahomes, they might open it up. I
That's
mean,
true.
they just brought in Sammy Watkins. They still have Tyreek Hill. Like, those two are like a dynamic wide receiver. So, and with Pat Mahomes with the arm he had, like they made Alex Smith throw the ball downfield. He did good. Yeah, like, he did well. But that really wasn't, before that year, it really wasn't his thing, and that's why people were worried about Alex Smith. But he started to throw the ball downfield, had success. But with Mahomes, he's like the new gunslinger. So they'll probably, I think they'll air it out more. And maybe that takes some more running plays away from Kareem Hunt, just more opportunities kind of shifting away from Kareem Hunt. So I'm not saying he's gonna be a bust, but I'm just saying, watch out. He might
Not return the value if you're going straight
exactly.
away like this is the number one guy.
If you're
for
drafting
sure.
him in the first round, that could set up for disappointment. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And that's basically what we're doing here. Like, we're never going to be too extreme on any of these guys. It's all relative to where you're getting them and the value that they're going to bring, and just how it compares.
And
So
that's how I think you should look at it. You should look at it like, okay, I'm looking at this guy in this round, but what am I expecting from this player if I'm drafting him in this round? So you definitely want to worry about value. Like, first round guys should be those for sure. Like, like your Le'Veon Bells and your Odell. Like, if injury does not happen, they have to be a stud. Like, they have to give you that first round value.
yes, for sure. All right, let's see.
You got next.
Next, we're going to go with Alshon Jeffrey. Now, last year, he didn't have a great year in terms of number of receptions or yardage. They were actually some of his lowest in quite a while, but he did have a huge spike in touchdowns. He had 9 of those, and he had a fairly high average yard per catch. And what really helped him was the fact that he played all 16 games for the first time since 2014. We know with a player like him who's very quick and rangy, that he's prone to injuries, or at least that's what's happened the past few years, and then getting suspended for PEDs, whether it was something he was taking to come back from those injuries or to prevent injuries. We don't know the full story. But so last year he had a great year. He got back on track. He had Carson Wentz throwing him the ball, and even if Carson Wentz wasn't there, he still had Nick Foles, who's a very capable backup. So there was a lot of things that went his way, and I'm just not sure everything falls into place again. There's so many weapons on that offense. It could take another step. I just don't know if, when they have all that value tied to their touchdowns, that you can count on that week to week basis. And I really like a consistent player. So maybe he doesn't have the highest ceiling in the world, which a player like Jeffrey, he does have a very high ceiling. But his floor can also sometimes dip low if he's not getting those touchdowns, because he's not getting the same number of targets that he used to from his days, in Chicago when he was playing with Smoke and Jay, and he was always out there with Brandon Marshall. He was going to get fed the ball, and it's not the same way, the dynamic here. So I don't think he'll have quite the same season he does. So just be careful where you're picking him.
Yeah, Alshon Jeffrey. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Like, with Carson Wentz coming back will be a big help, and Nick Foles was definitely. Nick Foles a Super Bowl winning backup is you definitely can label that as a good quarterback or a serviceable quarterback. But yeah, I like Alshon, but I think, again, like the value where you're drafting him, he can potentially go, he could potentially boom, but that ceiling, that floor could be down there.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. We should have one more bust, Bob.
Yeah, I'm the last one on the bus here. I'm going LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy with the
Mm.
Bills. I think the Bills offense or their Bills team in general will take a step back this year. I don't think people really understood how much Tyrod Taylor's play helped
He was
LaShawn
also
McCoy.
someone who never got his credit. He really never did. There were games where people, they built him back up and they realized what he can do. And now he did have his limits, but I mean, he was so much better than people talk about him for.
Tyrod?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And now he's going to the Browns, and I know like the job's his as of right now, but he has Baker Mayfield right behind him, so he still might be overshadowed and not really get his opportunity to kind of shine. So it's unfortunate for him. Anyways, going back to LaShawn McCoy though with the Bills, he's turning 30. That's usually that's a big marker. I'm not saying it's the be all end all marker of running backs taking a step back, but it definitely is something to watch out for. Another stat that I saw was running backs and their career carry count. And I can't remember what the article was I was reading, but they had written an article about they had taken a look at older running backs over like the past decade, and some of these were really good running backs, and they looked at their carry count, their career carry count, and where was that point that once they hit that career carry mark that their production significantly came down, and that marker was 1,800 to 2,000 career carries. And LaShawn McCoy, he was over that last year and still produced well, but he is well into that carry count.
Hmm.
So it's a very high risk for a draft pick that is going in like the second round.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that you bring that up because last year he had his most attempts since 2014. And another thing, so that obviously built his value, and he played all 16 games last year, which he hadn't done since 2014. Unfortunately, he did have the lowest average of his career, though, and he's been playing in the league for 10 seasons now. That's a lot of wear and tear, and he's certainly talented, whether it's running the ball or catching the ball out of the backfield. He's always been very good at that, but you have to wonder, is this the year it finally catches up? Now, everyone speculated last year, and they thought that could be it, but you're just not quite sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said, there's some other guys that are going in the second round around around LaShawn McCoy, Devonta Freeman and Jerick McKinnon, and I like those back. I think I would like in those first couple rounds. I like to stay a little bit safer. I'll get my potential boom players later in the draft. Like
And I also think that the teams that those players are on, the Falcons and the 49ers, are going to be better set up to win and be an offensive force this year.
yeah, give me players that are on offensive powerhouses and teams that are winning. Like it's just natural that those players will produce more. I don't think the Bills are in that situation. And if I'm staring down LaShawn McCoy in the draft or Devonta Freeman or Jarrett McKinnon, I think I will pivot away from LaShawn McCoy. I just think this year, I just think they're asking too much from him from a Bills standpoint. So I see him. It could be a potential bust year for him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All right. And that does it for the potential busts.
Yep.
So moving on, let's see. The third category we said we were going to cover is the Saavy veterans. Now, these
So
are the
savvy.
picks. These are the guys in your drafts who they at one point had that star power. They were the big names that became well known, whether it's because they were putting up highlights or because of the stats they were putting out on the fantasy sheets. But maybe the past few seasons they've dipped a little or they found themselves in tough situations, but now they go somewhere new and they're refreshed, they're revitalized, or players are coming back healthy and that can help their system as a whole. So up first, one of those players would be Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb, who does he get back this year? Obviously, one of the most important players in the league, and that is Aaron Rodgers. If you have a healthy Aaron Rodgers, that immediately opens up so much more that you can do with the playbook and just the comfort level, the way that they have the chemistry down the field. Now, Jordy Nelson is gone, so maybe some of those targets, it's a lot of targets. They shift, obviously. You brought in Jimmy Graham, so he's going to take some of those. And then you have Devontae Adams out wide, who's really developing nicely. But then if those are the guys drawing the main coverage, that's going to leave Cobb open underneath and in the seam quite a bit. So I like the way his outlook is shaping up. And if you go to the backfield, they had tons of injuries back there, but they have three really good running backs. And if they can stay healthy as a whole and be consistent, and Rodgers is back there, this team could obviously be very dangerous as usual. But that really helps Cobb to bounce back, get the targets, be that kind of open man. And we know he's a star. He can be that player.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are so caught up on Devonte Adams right now. Everyone's saying like Devonte Adams, like Jordy's gone, like he's gonna be the guy. And if you're drafting, that's a good thing because it's like, yes, like go for Devonte Adams. I will get the value of Randall Cobb later in the draft. Um, and some people worry about him supporting two wide receivers that could potentially be wide receiver ones. But if you look back 2 or 3 years, it was the year before Jordy Nelson got hurt in the preseason. The year before that, Aaron Rodgers, I think it was Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson both were wide receiver ones. So both those players were wide receiver ones that year. So he can do it. Devonte Adams and Randall Cobb can both feast in this offense, I believe. Like you said, healthy Aaron Rodgers. I like it.
Yeah, he's been around he's going into his 8th season. He's been around. He knows the system. He's familiar in the area. He's been on Green Bay. So
Same
things
with
are
Randall
shaping
Cobb.
up really nicely. So we like him to be a savvy vet. He might fall a little because of what he did last year. And if he does, grab him.
Yeah.
You won't regret it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Good.
Let's see. Yep. Next guy, Bob.
I feel like this is a BNFFLN favorite here. He's part of the Good Hands Committee.
Oh,
it's your man Larry Fitzgerald.
Oh, I love me some Larry.
Oh man, I want to live like Larry.
Don't we all?
I feel like we all should. Okay, so I don't believe the Arizona Cardinals will be a good team this year. Let's get that out. And I know.
You sure?
I don't.
They got a new coach in there.
Yeah, and they got a good running back. Yeah,
they got a good running back coming back from injury.
I think so. And I was gonna touch on the quarterback spot. They have Sam Bradford coming in, who held the record for 1 year for most completions in a season, or most accurate quarterback.
Yeah, highest completion percentage.
Yeah, only to be broken by the
Drew
next.
Brees.
Yeah, the next person I'm going to talk about. Spoiler alert. But yeah, so Sam Bradford. But the thing about Sam Bradford is he could be hurt. Like
he will be hurt.
Exactly.
And you never want it, but it just. That's what happened every single season.
Yeah. And I hear that as a knock against Larry Fitzgerald. It's like, okay, well, Sam Bradford's great, but what if he gets hurt? Look at last year.
Yeah.
Look at last year. Last year, these are some of the quarterbacks that Larry had to produce with. Carson Palmer, old quarterback, good quarterback, but old, aging quarterback. Then Blaine Gabbert, not the best. I mean, Drew Stanton. So those three quarterbacks, like those aren't like high profile,
and Larry still over 100 receptions, over 1,000 yards,
yes,
and had consistent touchdowns. Like he didn't spike or anything, and they weren't low, so it was a nice mid-level and he has a long career, so he can do it. But
possession guy, like I think, especially if Sam Bradford stays healthy for at least a good chunk of the season, I think Larry Fitzgerald can be that anchor in your lineup, that anchor in your roster that is like, no matter what, I can throw him in the flex and just get some for sure points. So I like Larry. I like Larry.
You like Larry?
I like Larry.
All right. Always a savvy vet. And even if Bradford does get hurt, they have Rosen, who they just brought in.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be this really super smart, intelligent guy, so hopefully he can learn that playbook quick. And if he does, and he does get tossed out there, hopefully they can develop some kind of chemistry, and that'll help even more. You have this young quarterback to maybe energize you. So who knows?
My question is if they're going to keep Larry in the slot, because I know he was always an outside guy, but as he got older, he wasn't as fast and getting up the field. And but I think the smartest decision was moving him into that slot. And you saw for a little bit that Larry's production dipped until they moved him into the slot, and then his production shot right back up because he's more of a possession guy now. He doesn't really have the speed to break down the sideline, but moving him into that slot spot had made him more accessible to the quarterback. So with the new coach, I'm wondering if they're gonna keep him in that slot spot.
It'll be interesting. It'll be exciting to see, but yeah.
That's why we play.
Larry Fitzgerald.
For the excitement.
Pick him up. All right, and my second savvy vet, kind of, is I'm going to go with Josh Gordon. Now, hopefully he will remain clean and build on what he was able to do at the tail end of last season because he obviously didn't play after he was returning from his suspension and he was being reinstated. And we know he has always had all the talent in the world. He still possesses blazing speed, great hands. He's still a young guy. It's just that he hasn't played as much, as the game moved on. But it didn't look like that at all last year. And he was in Cleveland, and he had Deshaun Kaiser throwing him the ball. He had Kessler throwing like they're.
Don't you besmirch the name of Kessler.
They had all these rotating quarterbacks, and Hugh Jackson could never make up his mind. But guess who they got? They got Tyrod Taylor. He's a consistent guy, and he's a threat with his legs. So hopefully they can get something going together, and if they do, it can be really good. And if Tyrod Taylor, if he gets hurt, which we know he's gotten hurt in the past, they did draft their number 1 draft pick, Baker Mayfield, is there waiting in the wings. Now, you don't know if he's going to play, but he's also, at least at the college level, was about as dynamic as you can possibly be. So something there could be really special if they can develop that.
I'm really excited, and it sounds weird, but I'm really excited to see the Browns play this year.
It is. Well, for the first time, they have their defense is improving, but on the offensive side of the ball, they look like they have a legitimate offense. They have Tyrod Taylor backed up by Baker Mayfield. They have a great group of wide receivers and running backs, and they added to that. They brought in, was it Carlos Hyde?
They have Carlos Hyde, Nick Chubb, and who's that third one? Can't remember off the top of my head.
He was Duke Johnson.
Yeah, that's right, Duke Johnson. Yeah, because they got rid of Isaiah Crowell.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like that right there, that offense, that could really be something as long as that line holds up, which it certainly could. Although they lost Joe Thomas, but it's weird. The Browns could be an exciting team. Even if they don't put up the wins, the players on those teams are going to be in competitive games. Mm-hmm. And if that's what you need in fantasy is competitive games, because you don't want blowouts. You want it close so they bounce off each other, and they have to keep moving. They have to do this to get
keep using their offensive weapons, and that just that's fantasy points right there. Yeah, I like the Cleveland Browns. I'm with Tyrod. I'm hoping because if he doesn't do well in the first couple of weeks and people start chirping about get Baker in there, I just hope Baker's ready. I think he is, but I just hope he's ready.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Either way, Josh Gordon, keep an eye out for him. You're never sure where he's going to be in the draft just because of his past issues. And if he falls far enough, the value will certainly be there. Snag him, and at worst, he ends up as your wide receiver 3, but maybe that's where you grab him. And he could be all the way up there at wide receiver 1 status. So who knows?
Yeah, that'd be great value. Moving on. All righty. Mine's he's an old vet. He's up there.
Seasoned.
He's heavily seasoned. He's throwing the salt on there. He's all seasoned up. He's been in the league for a long time. Good friend of the show, Drew Brees.
Good friend of the show.
That's
Drew
right.
Brees.
I feel like the last couple of years, a lot of people have kind of shied away from Drew Brees, and
they're waiting for him to drop off.
Yeah,
and he refuses to do so.
He's like, I see you, I see the haters out there, and I'm gonna set y'all straight.
So what does he do? He goes and sets records. That's what he does.
He goes re-breaks records that he got taken from him, because Drew Brees had owned the most accurate. He was the most accurate quarterback in NFL history for a single season, broken by Sam Bradford with the Vikings. Then last year he goes back and he breaks it, and not only does he break it, but he does it where his average depth of target was long. Like, it wasn't like he was like doing these dinks and dunks. Like, he's a very accurate quarterback. So to see him at that age go out there and be accurate and hit wide receivers, and I just think Drew Brees gets overlooked, and I think he's going to have another solid, productive year.
Yeah, I'm excited, and he's a guy that he's always easy to root for. He's just always been a good guy. He's been around for a while. He's done it all. He's just he's a stand-up guy, and the way the team has kind of bounced back, because he had some tough years where he had this great quarterback and his team couldn't really do anything for him other than a couple star players, which was still exciting to watch. But now they're really growing into what could be something special. I mean, they were one play away from being. Yeah,
that play hurts, man. I'm not a Vikings fan, but if I was a Vikings fan, I don't know if I'd be able to bring that up yet.
One play away from what, the NFC Championship game?
from the NFC. Yeah, because then the Vikings went to play the Eagles and got
Yeah.
destroyed.
Yeah, that they did. So, you have a lot of weapons on that offense, and with Ingram and
Cameron Meredith
Kamara, and yeah, they pick up
from the
Cameron
Bears.
Meredith. They
Yeah.
steal him from the Bears, and you have Michael Thomas out wide. They could be really good, and that defense is still very young, and it's going to get even better. So he's going to have all the opportunity in the world, and if he just does what he's always done, he's going to be great.
And I think it's better now because I don't think he has to do it all on his own anymore. Like he has good running backs. He has great wide receivers. Even if he's not accurate, I think Michael Thomas is and Cameron Meredith, I think both of those guys are capable of going up and getting a ball that maybe won't be the most accurate. So I think Drew Brees still has legs. I think he's got legs for days. He's gonna go. He's in it for the long haul.
All right, very good. And that is your last of the Saavy vets.
Time to get to some exciting stuff.
Exciting. This is what you were really here for. That's why we put it last.
Yeah, we wanted to reel you in with, and just get you along.
It's the new toys. They're exciting,
shiny.
Everyone's all hyping up. You're only going to hear positive stories out of training camps.
It's like Christmas. It's like Christmas when you get them. The draft's over. You see what teams they're on. It's like Christmas every year. Like you just see, the potential, the possibilities, the talent.
And that would be the rookie class.
Yeah.
So, Bob, why don't you start us off here?
All right. I'm going to go with Rashad Penny.
Rashad Penny.
So, let's see. Rashad Penny, so with rookies is a little difficult because you haven't seen any NFL game footage of them. The only thing you can go off is college footage. So I was able to watch a couple college games with him. I think he's really good. He runs hard. He runs downhill. He averaged about 3.32 yards after contact behind a line of scrimmage. That was enough to place him number 1 in the country. That stat was also so there was 58 running backs that had a certain amount of carries, and he almost led that category in yards after contact behind the line of scrimmage. So he had a good offensive line, and I think that's like, and I know we're talking about rookies that are going to go boom, but if there was anything that might hesitate me, would be the offensive line.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern with him, actually, because Russell Wilson is great, and he can move the pocket around, and he can stretch the field. He can do it all. But that offensive line has been so bad for so long, and for whatever reason, they just can't seem to beef it up or get it right. And they've since Marshawn Lynch got hurt with, I think, his hernia a couple seasons ago, and they've had a rotating stable of running backs, and none of them, they all have a promising game here and there, but they just don't seem to last. And so I'm worried someone that got as many carries as he did in college, who now comes in and he's going to get battered behind that line. I'm just not quite sure.
Yeah, I think he will be. I'm hoping, and I think he will be the guy behind that offensive line. So I'm hoping that. But I just seeing the footage that you had from college, he's a hard runner, runs downhill. I think he will get the goal line work as well. So that that's potential touchdowns. Like he's a big running back. So I like him. I like him in Seattle.
Yeah, and he's a rookie, so you never know what can happen. Obviously, there's a lot to like, but there's a few things to hesitate. So as long as you're smart about it, I mean, you're going to be set up nicely, and that's really why you're listening to the show.
And that's why we say,
draft him.
Draft that rookie. Draft Rashad Penny.
Rookie. All right, and my first rookie pick is Royce Freeman, actually. Let's see. Royce Freeman, he is someone who had been criticized, playing at Oregon. They say, oh, is he a product of the system, or is he really as good as he's supposed to be here? I mean, he's 6 foot, 230 pounds. He's a bigger guy. He's got 4.5 speed, so not the fastest, but when you weigh that much, like that's a lot. That's a big man moving down the field.
An arm tackle is not going to get the job done.
No, definitely
he's going to be like,
not.
Get that weak shit out of here.
He's an athletic guy. So I like, and I didn't even mention, he's on Denver, and Denver seemed like they were really close last year. They just didn't have a quarterback. So they got Case Keenum. Hopefully that can be their answer there.
I like him there.
And so do I. And if that is, he's going to be competing for the running back job. I think he will ultimately win that job by week 4. It should be his to take. And I don't know. I just liked him a lot. I don't have that many stats on him, but just watching some of his highlight tape, which can be deceiving because it's highlights, so
Yeah.
you're obviously seeing the best.
But at the same time,
But
stats don't tell the whole story. Like
yeah,
sometimes the eyeball test is great to have, especially with a young college kid.
so yeah, I mean, I think he's going to end up in a good situation. He has all the physical tools, and he certainly has the tape. So if it all comes together, I really like him.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I know he's a great cutter. Like he really plants and he can move directions very quickly. There was the one play that I did watch. They were playing Iowa and two guys rushing off the edge got in the backfield untouched before he was even handed the ball. And he just took one sidestep and went right by both of them after doing another cut and then ended up in the end zone. So I think look for him to work once he gets to that line of scrimmage to like set up his blocks and just cut hard. And like if he sees someone closing on that gap, he can easily cut it back the other way. So definitely watching him play is exciting. So I'm definitely excited to see him play as well.
All right. Who you got next?
All right, next is I feel like this next one's an obvious one because he went early in the draft, and that is Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, he went to Penn State. That category that I was talking about with Rashad Penny, he was the worst. Like he didn't have a lot of yards after contact because the line of scrimmage he was working with was terrible. So that kind of gives me hope because no matter how bad the New York Giants offensive line is, I think he can still get it done. He's a very dynamic player. He runs hard. I like he stays extremely low. And what I mean by that is like when he's running and he breaks down by the line of scrimmage, he's not an upright runner. He stays low. He has powerful legs. I think Saquon Barkley is going to be big. And now like knowing that they drafted him coming from a Giant standpoint, I feel like it's all on Eli this year. He's got the weapons at wide receiver. He has a solid tight end, and now they went out and got a stalwart running back, which I was kind of concerned because I was hoping that they would get the backup or the predecessor to
Eli.
but they went out, so they're all bought in on Eli. So it's really up to him because I think Saquon Barkley will provide that relief, and he will provide a running game that's been lacking the last couple of years for the Giants.
Yeah, I mean Barkley, he's obviously very easy to like. He's another guy, 6 foot, 235 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
and he had one of the quicker 40-yard dash time. I think it was a 4.4 something. It was real low. Good vertical jump, and then very strong. And obviously those are just the measurables, but you watch this kid play. He's very good, and he's going to not the best situation, but it could certainly be worse.
Way worse, yeah.
Now, we had talked before when the Giants drafted him. I thought that was a big mistake on the Giants' part. Just in terms of their team, their development over the next 5 years, they certainly got the best player, I think available. But did they need to draft him there? It doesn't matter now because here he is. He's in New York, and I think he's going to take it by storm, similar to how Odell all of a sudden was on the scene once he came back from his initial hamstring injury, and then he lit it up. And then all of a sudden they got good quick. So if those things kind of fall into place again, and he's certainly a player you can do that around, it'll be really exciting to watch him play.
Just like when I look at college players that are getting drafted this year, I look at like who's going to have the most immediate impact, and I think the competition there at the running back position there's nothing there. Like he will step in as the lead dog. So
especially if you look at the draft in the years past, a lot of the running backs that get picked, in the first 3 or 4 rounds, they come to the NFL. They're able to start relatively quick because of injuries or they fill a need, and they do make an impact on the field. Whereas wide receivers or tight ends, it's a much longer, drawn-out process. So someone like him who is a running back, who's been a star, who can handle that pressure, he knows people are targeting him and game planning to stop him, I think he'll do a great job.
Yep, I like Saquon Barkley. I'm excited to watch him.
All right, and our last player for the rookies is Darius Geis. Geis? What is it? Do you know?
I think it's Geis.
Geis?
But I kind of like Geis.
I'm not sure what it is.
It's just like, yeah.
But
We'll
I
get him
like
on the
him.
show. We'll get him on the show. We'll ask him.
I like him. I think the Redskins, where they got him in the draft, was a steal, an absolute steal. He didn't get picked till late in the second round, and he was first round talent. Obviously, you had all these weird stories coming out about his interviews with teams and people asking him inappropriate questions and his responses and all that. And so it just kind of feel like that became the narrative, and people bought into that, and they quit looking at what he did on the field and his talent. And so he kind of fell, and he's in a spot in with Washington where you have Christian Thompson there, but you don't know if he can hold up as the main back. So I feel like he can easily step in and be that 3 down back, and when he needs a breather, if he is taking more time to learn it, you have Christian Thompson who can run the ball but also can take some of those passes. So I think he's just going to be in a good situation. You have Alex Smith, who might not press the ball deep unless he continues that trend from last year, but he'll be right there, and he knows how to run an offense. So I think that'll also really help.
Yeah, you want to talk about getting value in a draft, and just like not just a fantasy football draft, but from a NFL draft standpoint. Yeah, I definitely loved that pick. That pick was definitely, I think that'll definitely pay dividends. Like you had said, like Christian Thompson, not injury prone, but like he just, yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to hold up for 16 games. And I think once he goes down or comes out or something happens, like I think Geis will easily be able to step into that and shock a lot of people for where he was taken.
Yeah, and I think another reason he have dropped, he was hurt in 2017,
Yes,
and
yeah,
that
that's right.
obviously factors in. But if he can return to the player he was before, I mean, this is the guy that took over for Leonard Fournette, and he's a very similar player. He's obviously not the same,
Mm-hmm.
but they're both from LSU. He kind of learned. He saw from him. They're similar build. He's a little smaller, but still, he's had the mentality, he's had the vision, he's learned similar playbook. If he can come in, step in, and start, and like you said with Saquon, an immediate impact player, this could be the rookie that you want to look at and draft right away.
Yeah, and it's tough with injuries to young players, because it's like, is this going to be a normal thing or not? Because injuries for young players, they tend to recover a lot quicker. So it's tough. I feel like it would be tough to kind of focus on injuries when thinking about drafting a running back. It's always it's always something you're thinking about. But I just feel with young players, it's not as bad as if he was a 29-year-old running back that got hurt, like, and then
Yeah, and
looking to sign with a new
and a
team.
player like him, you're probably not going to be drafting him in the first 3 rounds anyways. So you don't have as much invested in that player. So if they
Won't
do
bite
get
you, yeah.
hurt, yeah, it's not going to affect your team as much. All right,
Did we do it?
we did it.
We did it.
Nice and quick for you guys. But yeah, we were able to touch on a couple players here and there. Hopefully, it's enough to kind of get you back into the swing of things, get you a little familiar with some of these players that you already knew, some guys you forgot about, and learn something new. So who knows?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for this season. I'm excited for the draft. I'm excited for all of it. I'm excited to see everyone's faces, everyone's beautiful faces.
It'll be exciting. So yeah, that about does it for this week's edition of the Boys Night Fantasy Football League Network. Thanks, guys.
Yep. See you guys later.